Story Up Studios, and I'll tell you what, I am in a room with so many phenomenal women, I can barely stand it. I'm so excited about hear about their projects. These are VR content creators, 360 video content creators, people who are in the immersives business and doing some really fascinating things that we wanted to share with you, and also share a little bit about some of the challenges that they're facing in hopes that it can help you in your current situation creating virtual reality. So let's start with some introductions. And guys, whenever I say your name, if you give us a way so we all can introduce you a little bit. Christina Heller, she is with VR Playhouse. She is the CEO and co-founder of VR Playhouse, a creative studio and virtual reality production company. VR Playhouse has made immersive content for Red Bull, Discovery Channel, and various other production and VR companies. Before VR, Christina was a journalist turned filmmaker. She also produced and directed 2 feature documentaries, covered presidential elections, and was featured on Good Morning America, Fox Business, and Huffington Post Live. Hello, Christina. So glad to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Marcel Hopkins. Marcel is an independent journalist specializing in human rights and humanitarian crises. She is currently directing an immersive documentary on South Sudan for PBS's investigative series Frontline. In 2015, she received a Magic Grant from the Brown Institute for Media Innovation and a Social Justice Media Fellowship from the Made in New York Media Center by IFP. In 2014, she wrote and produced an interactive documentary on Sri Lanka's recovery from civil war, which won a UN Foundation Prize and a Horizon Interactive Award. Marcel, it's great to have you here in the Hangout today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Glad to have you here. And joining us from Germany, where they're shooting a documentary right now, Melissa Bosworth and Lakshmi Sarah are journalists and graduate students at UC Berkeley School of Journalism in the new media track. They are currently in Germany shooting their thesis project, which aims to be an immersive look at life in Germany from the perspectives of refugees. Guys, great to have you here today.
Thank you. Thanks.
And Nicole Relia. Nicole, am I pronouncing your last name correctly? Okay, sounds good.
Relier.
Relier, sounds good. She manages the online and offline communities for Jaunt VR, the users, the partners, including events, social media management, and internal communications. Prior to Jaunt, Nicole spent 5 years as a social media and branding consultant to early-stage tech startups, so hopefully she'll have some good advice for all of the startups out there who are in virtual reality today, helping them establish their brand voice, growing their social media presence as well. She also helps aspiring founders with the Silicon Valley Ambassador for Co-Founders Lab and regularly conducts fundraising campaigns for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. Nicole, it's great to have you here today.
Glad to join you.
Also, we have Dan Rojas, who is our man in the Hangout, who is supporting women in VR. It's so glad to have you here. Dan worked in VR experiences from 2010, so back in the day in 2010, starting from a photographer's background. Then in 2012, he was able to create his first degree video made basically from taking several 360-degree panoramic images. Now he has an emerging VR company at Columbia creating high-end 360-degree video experiences. And Dan, what is the name of your company?
Hola, the name of my company is 3Go Video.
Great.
You can check it out.
Great. It's at 3govideo.com. Great. Dan, it's glad to have you here in a Hangout today. Maria Karloff, she is a freelance business and technology writer based in Western Massachusetts. She's president of Trombley International. That's an editorial services firm with correspondents in Asia and Russia that provides coverage of emerging markets focusing on finance, payments, and technology for U.S.-based businesses. She's also COO of the China Speakers Bureau. She writes about enterprise security, about VR a lot, has some fascinating articles, and is editor and publisher of Hypergrid Business, an online publication focusing on enterprise applications of immersive virtual environments. Angela Haddad. Hi, Angela. How are you?
Hi, everyone. Good. How are you?
Well, good. You are the head and project manager at Gravitas, a web development agency based in Huntington Beach, California. You are a part-time fashion illustrator working under the handle 1/3 Blue, and for the past few months, you've been filming 360-degree content and have gradually been fine-tuning your focus on fashion. Angela, it's great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
And Michelle Osorio, also known as Michelle Kenobi in online and gaming circles. She's a filmmaker, an artist, and a musician who started out with traditional film background. She became a YouTuber. Then she directed several gaming web series that have gone viral. She's a member of the YouTube Space Alumni Program, where she shot 360-degree video content, mostly about gaming and technology, at her studio in LA. You can subscribe to her YouTube channel, Kill9TV. She will soon premiere a 360-degree zombie comedy prequel to her viral hit Boomer's Day Off. And you can find her 360 videos on Facebook and YouTube as well. Michelle, welcome today.
Hi.
Well, I am stoked to have all of you in the Hangout. I hope you listen closely to some of their bios, because this is an impressive group on the variety of spectrums, doing fascinating things with VR and social media, fascinating things with VR journalism, as well as branded content as well. So I want to start off by asking you guys about the biggest hurdle that you're facing right now, and how are you solving it? And before you ask that question, I want to give a note to the audience that if you all have a question that you would like us to ask some of these women in VR and content creators, if you would tweet me at Sarah Midmo, that's Sarah with an H, Sarah Midmo. I'm also watching our Facebook group as well as my social media channels. I would be happy to ask your specific question. So, biggest hurdle, Christina Heller, let's start with you. The biggest hurdle that you're facing now, and how are you solving it?
So, interestingly enough, the biggest hurdle that we've been facing is exporting and render times. You know, we are, trying to consistently and reliably deliver on multiple projects simultaneously, but one of the things we were running up against was it was difficult to even preview our own work because our render times were so huge and so long. So the way that we had to address it was to build a render farm, and that was a huge infrastructure upgrade for us this past fall, and we have a render farm now that is the equivalent of, I would say, like maybe 30 high-performance computers operating, at the same time, and it's been, basically leaps and bounds better. We've now cut our render time in half or more, depending on what we're rendering, and that helps, like I said, for review on our own work, and also for things like client previews, and just so that we can continue to operate. It's one of those things where it's not what the first thing that you hear about when people are talking about 360 video. You're often hearing about cameras, or you're hearing about GoPros, but really, we've found that the post-production and the computer end is where, honestly, most of our attention has been for the last year or 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. 3 terabytes of data is what we're going through even for just one video. And that is not only a huge time suck, but also a huge expense, going through that much data for every single project. And a reminder, if you have a question, the official hashtag is Women in VR. That's Women in VR. We are following that, and you can follow along the conversation as well right there. So how about anybody else? What's the biggest hurdle that you're facing right now, and how are you solving it? Michelle? Put you on the spot. Go for it.
I would have to say, being somebody who started from a film background, which was very methodical and planned out, and moving into the YouTube kind of workflow where you had to learn how to work really fast, I would say it's a similar problem. It's about workflow and finding a camera and a rig and a setup that can move fast, basically, and I haven't really found that yet. I'm about to start working on my 3rd rig, and it's just, that part's been a little frustrating to have to slow way down back like the old days and really spend a lot of time with the stitching and figuring that out until it's presentable enough to put on YouTube, and also educating viewers who really don't understand that it's a lot harder than it looks.
Absolutely, educating those viewers about how to actually view that content as well. I'm sure
Right.
You guys are running into that situation too. So Marcel, how about you? What's the biggest hurdle that you're facing, and how are you overcoming it?
Sure, yes. I'm also coming from a news and documentary background, and one of my biggest challenges in making this immersive film has been the narrative storytelling, because it's very, very different in 360 than it is in a framed video, and some of the tropes that we often use for narrative storytelling like, for example, having a voiceover. If you see someone who is doing something and you hear them talking, in general, we know that the person I'm looking at is the one talking, even though I don't see their lips moving. And one thing that I found in screening and demoing the rough cuts of our film is that people get very distracted by hearing a voiceover when they're actually not seeing someone's lips moving. So we have been experimenting with different ways of putting someone in front of the camera, and one of the stylistic choices that we made is that we, as the crew, would not be there during the scene. So we have to go and leave, which presents the interview challenges. How do you interview someone when you're not even in the room? But one of the things that we've done is put someone in front of the camera and ask them to say one thing. We would ask them one question or have them introduce themselves, so that and often that is the first time that the viewer will meet that person in the documentary. That they're looking directly at the camera, they're saying, my name is so-and-so, and then they say one thing, and then following that, the voiceover tends to work better. But it was a big challenge because some of the footage that we got in the field, we didn't have that with them. And we were trying to tell stories. We were trying to have people tell their own stories, and needing to edit that into a comprehensive thought was very challenging in 360.
Yes, certainly directing the viewer's attention. How do we do it with sound, with animation, some great insight there, and interviewing subjects. We all play professional hide and seek, right? We're always hiding behind bushes, and I'm sure you guys have funny stories about people seeing you on the trail and thinking, is she going to the bathroom behind that tree, or what are they doing behind that tree? Have you found, Marcel or anybody else who wants to take this, in interviewing themselves, which really in 360 video, especially with news documentaries, that sometimes those interviews are a lot better or a lot more candid when they are just speaking to the camera than if there's somebody there in front of you with a notebook, nodding their head. I don't know what you found, but I found that sometimes those interviews are even more compelling and even more candid when they are interviewing themselves.
We were certainly very surprised at some of the footage that we got, that we reviewed when we reviewed the dailies later on. A lot of it was a lot more authentic and candid than I think we would have gotten had we been in the room or had we been standing behind the camera. We had some very, very intimate moments with people in their homes, in the hospital, and I think after a while, once we set up the camera and we start rolling and we leave, for the first few minutes people tend to be hyper aware of the camera, and then after 5 or 10 minutes or so they kind of forget about it and go on about their business, and that gave us some jewels and some gems that we had to work with later.
Who else wants to share about some of the hurdles or challenges that they're encountering and how they're able to overcome them? Go ahead and raise your hand. Yes, Nicole.
Sure. So obviously coming from the launching a startup in VR space, we faced just about every challenge you can figure out there. Definitely echo other people's sentiments around where does the crew sit? How do you guide people's vision? A lot of these are problems that we're still working on and still learning about, with this new medium. I think two of the biggest things that we're facing, one is growth. I get to be the person who answers all of the incoming emails that come to Jaunt. And we have so many people that want to use our cameras and have these brilliant ideas and want to tell these great stories. And we have 9 cameras total right now. And so that's a real challenge. And it's like the more people that are excited about it, the more cameras we need. And then when you have more cameras, you need more people to do the filmmaking and more engineers to support that and more back-end people. And so it feels like every step forward we take, you have to raise the whole playing field. You can't just bulk up one side of the creative process. I think the other thing, and this is true probably for everyone in the industry, somebody mentioned education. Really teaching people what VR is, how it's different than just 360 video. I think a lot of people see the Facebook 360 video and think that's VR. They don't even realize that there's something more out there.
Although there is a growing community of individuals who will lump them in together because because ultimately, who knows, in a year or two, they will be together. And a lot of the apps, you know, when you go to play them on the side, it says VR, which that's a 360 video, that's CG, that's everything else. So curious to see in this group, you know, to pose that question, how many of you all believe 360 video is VR?
It can be really hard to tell the difference because you're seeing it both in side by side in the headset, and in fact, when YouTube first released their VR videos, I had to go back and forth between the 360 and the VR, and the 360 and the VR, trying to figure out what the difference was.
Yeah.
Because it's not really obvious. Like, oh, that's more like a flat surround, and that has depth, you know.
I'm curious to know what Nicole would distinguish the difference to be.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, sorry, Nicole, I cut you off. Go for it.
not a problem at all. Well, I think that, you know, I just sort of say one of the other challenges is in vocabulary and how we talk about these things, right? Like even when we talk about our things, do we call them videos because there's something more than video? But if you call it an experience, do people understand what it is? You know, I think there are some big debates out there right now about what is or is not true 360, true 3D, or true VR. To me, anything that is immersive that you can view in an HMD or VR viewer is virtual reality, and that's sort of the definition that we're working with for the time being. These things may continue to evolve as the industry grows. We're trying very much to help define that conversation and figure out what that vocabulary is, but I think the community as a whole is really going to be the one that shapes that. So to answer the question, right now we're looking at VR as anything that you can, that's immersive. You know, people will argue sometimes that the lack of interactivity makes it not virtual reality. But then I watched some people put on the headset, and you know, Sarah, my dad watched the Veterans United video over Christmas, and he came out of it with tears in his eyes and feeling like he'd really been there. And so when you see somebody with that level of impact and immersion, it's hard to say they didn't have an immersive experience, they didn't have a VR experience in that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, just to quickly jump in, you know, I think that part of the reason we're seeing a lot of the words being used interchangeably is because just virtual, if you call something virtual reality, it gets a lot more attention than if you call it a 360 video. So I know that at least on YouTube, a lot of people were, you know, I think we've tried both hashtags. You can put up a 360 video, and if you write like, oh, this is something, a 360 video, it gets so many hits. But if you put it like, oh, this is a virtual reality experience, people are like, what, VR? So, you know, I think that, you know, I don't know, there's a lot more excitement around virtual reality than there is 360 video, and I agree that, you know, it can be kind of argued either way.
I think it depends on who you ask too, because in terms of mainstream audience, nobody seems to tell the difference. I have a friend who's been trying to work with me on a project. He's trying to promote this thing that I'm working on, and he's telling everybody, come watch this virtual reality thing. And for a while, I was saying, well, it's a 360 video, technically, but nobody really seemed to care. And so I agree, if it's just immersive to people, then ultimately I think the argument is mostly semantics happening within the industry, but for people who are newer to it and who are excited, they don't seem to really be too concerned about the terminology just yet.
How about you, Lackey and Melissa over there? You've been quiet. What are some of the hurdles that you've been encountering, and how have you been solving them?
Well, one of the things that we're experiencing is just the everyday basics of like, okay, what to do when the camera overheats in the middle of a scene that you want to capture, or all the cameras worked except for one, can we still somehow salvage the material?
Yeah, definitely managing the number of cameras, and also folks were talking about the way that you can get a certain level of intimacy when you leave the camera there and you leave the room, but with limited filming time, you can only get so much, so it takes people a little while, and then by the time they warm up, maybe the cameras die. So it's been a challenge we've been dealing with. I think the way that we're dealing with that is getting them as used to the camera as is possible, and just coming back with it and coming back with it.
Great, Dan, you've been quiet over there. Dan, a supporter of our women in VR, so appreciate you being here as well. What are some of the hurdles you're facing in Colombia, and more specifically, what solutions are you using to counteract those hurdles?
Well, hi. Here in Colombia it has been like a great start from last year, with all this movement of YouTube allowing 360 content available in their channels. So for me, that I've been like striving to show what I can create for them, is being really interesting. The other thing I've noticed is that previewing the content you are creating, because usually I use GoPro cameras, yes, and in these cameras you cannot see what you capture. So every time is almost like you hope it will get great content, but it's not always good to believe in your camera, but to see what you're creating. So I've seen that there have a lot of options to create this kind of view previewing, but it's really expensive. So for me, I'm trying like what other solutions I can give it to preview my content. So it's basically money.
Great. Yep.
Um,
A reminder, you're watching a conversation with women in VR and those individuals who support women in VR. If you have a question for us, you can tweet us with the hashtag Women in VR. We have a question on the stream now from Will. He says, what is everyone's take on the Lytro light field camera? Have you been reading about that? Who knows? Maybe some of you guys have tried some of it.
I
ahead.
actually had my co-founder Ian Forster and I had the chance to go up to Lytro in October and had the opportunity to see what they were working on. You know, I would say that it's still early stage, you know, so I wouldn't start putting it in your bids yet, you know, but like, you know, don't start promising you can do light field capture to clients yet, because it's still definitely early stage. That being said, you know, I got the sense that there was a strong commitment there to do it, and I know that the rest of us in the industry are eagerly anticipating that kind of technology. But I still, like I said, I think we're still a little while away from seeing the actual camera prototype.
Okay. If any one of you guys were talking to another woman in VR right now, what would you tell her? What are some of the first things that she needs to do? What are some of the resources out there for women in VR when it comes to some of their projects? Who wants to take that one?
Well, I want to pitch Women in Virtual Reality, wivr.net. Which is kind of a networking group for women working in virtual reality. And we launched that a couple of years ago when we noticed that the first virtual reality conference had no women at all on any of the panels. Nadia de la Pena came in at the last minute to moderate one of the panels. She's a virtual reality video producer, documentarian. But aside from her, initially there was nobody at all. It makes it look like it's all a boys group, and it's very unfortunate because, of course, women are half of the user base of not just the players, but the consumers of video content and other types of content in virtual reality. They deserve to be part of creating this future. They deserve to be part of building it, of profiting from it, of getting the investment that they need to do this. And it helps adoption if the people building the technology understand what it's like to use this technology. There was an interesting article that came out today on The Verge about a woman trying out various virtual reality suits and other equipment at the CES and finding that most of the stuff was built to fit men, even though, again, women are half the users. There's a perception, a myth, that women aren't interested in this. That is just not true. And every study bears that out. But the myth is still there, and I'm just horrified by it. So reach out, become visible, speak up, get out there, show the world that women are interested in this, get more women into working on it, and go after the money, go after the media, go after all the stuff that you need to help build the companies. And as one of the media, I'd love to talk to you guys.
All
Yeah,
right.
I would second the Women in VR group. They're a very active online community. I found that to be a good resource. I think the other thing is, we just have to not be afraid to go to those meetups. When I went to my first SBVR a year and a half ago, it was me and 75 guys in a room. It was the weirdest feeling to me. Like, I expected to be one of the only women. I did not expect to be the only woman there. And what really baffles me about it, I get that a lot of VR came out of gaming, and the gaming community is largely men. Um, but VR is such a beautiful, like, creative, storytelling, empathetic place. And so I really think that there's a huge need for women creators in this space. I even look at the content that we create sometimes, and until we started doing some things with some of the fashion brands, we had like a kaiju movie and a war movie and like all these very like male-centric pieces of content. So yeah, absolutely get out there. I've been working in tech startups for 7 or 8 years. I've often been the only woman at the company. I was the second woman ever hired at Jaunt. We just have to not be afraid to go out there and stand up for saying like, yeah, we belong here too. And to the piece about headsets, it is really interesting. I came into VR and immediately started insisting everybody wipe everything down with alcohol wipes, because as a woman, I know you would never share eye makeup, so why would you share a headset? And a lot of guys, like, it hadn't occurred to them that this was a hygiene issue. So I think there's like little nuances like that you can bring into it as well. But yeah, no, I just strongly encourage women to like be confident, get out there, go stake your claim. The women in VR are growing every day. The meetups now in the Bay Area are 40 to 50% women, which is awesome to see. And I encourage everybody to just keep getting out there and doing stuff. And the women in VR groups are really great resources, but we also need to branch out of it and infiltrate the other groups and not just sort of stick to our side of the room either.
And as far as funding for projects for female content creators, there are, several out there, one of them being hollywomen.com. You can check out some grants on there for female VR content creators. So let's talk a little bit, and Angela, I would love for you to hop in as well, because we haven't heard much from you over there. So what challenges are you facing, and what are some of those solutions that you're using to overcome some of those hurdles?
Yeah, I've definitely come across a lot of the challenges that have already been mentioned. So I would have to echo, I think Christina mentioned the tech challenge of coming up with enough, like a strong enough computing power. And for me, the greatest challenge so far has been probably coming up with enough memory space for the project, because like you mentioned, often projects go up to several terabytes. And basically, that's just something that you have to deal with and just buy a bunch of hard drives, or maybe just upgrade your technology altogether. Other than that, I would also say a challenge that I've come across has been thinking creatively about the space that you're shooting in. Because, of course, with 360, you have to integrate everything. So right now I'm shooting something where it's a low-light situation, but it's also a controlled space, so I have to think creatively about how do I bring in more lighting while not, but it also has to be pretty light, right? So it can't be like something super industrial or practical. So I think I'm actually just going to end up bringing like a bunch of Christmas lights and see how that goes. So yeah, I think that we all have to think very creatively about things like that you wouldn't encounter with regular video.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about business models, because obviously, creating the content is important, but finding a way to make it sustainable is. So at Story Up, we have 2 studios. We have a journalism studio and a brand studio that actually finances our journalism. But I'm curious to hear from the group, what business models are you finding success in, or not finding success in, and what advice can you give to other VR startups out there that are jumping into the content creation business? And by the way, hats off to you guys, for not just putting your toe in the water, but jumping in full force in a path that hasn't been paved yet. So throw that out there. Who would like to talk about business models, what's working, isn't working in their particular shop?
Sure, I can take the lead on this one. So, I would say that we spent a lot of our last year, building the infrastructure and also building up our internal workflow to be able to make not only 360 video but also CGI and also increasingly game engine stuff. And we found that because it was such a new new industry, new medium, new workflow, that a huge bread and butter for us last year was post-production. We did a lot of post-production for other production companies that were more established, that maybe had great client relationships, but didn't actually know how to make the 360 video. Also, other virtual reality companies that just maybe are actually more like agencies, but don't have the in-house resources to get through all this 360 video. For us this year, one of our personal goals is to cut out the middlemen, to be able to get directly to those clients so that we don't have two steps between us and whoever we're actually delivering that work to. And also, like, post-production was like, it was it's the hard work. It's the stuff that no one else wanted to do. So it's just, since we were new and establishing ourselves, we were like, all right, we'll just do the thing that no one else wants to do. But the fun is often in the production, and it's also in the creative. And we have a really eclectic team with a lot of backgrounds in theater and journalism and animation. So again, we'd like to do some more of the fun stuff, I would say, this year. To that end, I think, and I'm sure that Nicole can also, because I know she's over at Jaunt, and she would echo these sentiments, I think that there's a huge opportunity for creatives to come up with content ideas for not just 360 video, but CG or a combination thereof. We are currently out, talking with a lot of playwrights and a lot of TV writers and trying to kind of work with them and hold their hands to transition from writing for those traditional mediums and start writing for VR. And there are companies, a number of them, Jaunt included, but increasingly more and more, companies that are interested in financing cool, original, cinematic VR content. And so what we're really needing is those fresh, cool, different ideas that I would say are VR native. We're not just taking something that was written for TV and saying, like, okay, now let's just put it in 360 video. Like, what is different about being inside the headset and in a 360 environment? How can you play with that? So one thing we've been talking a lot, it's almost like a good way to at least start talking about creative content for VR, although there's absolutely no hard rules for this so far, is thinking about it maybe a little like an immersive theater piece, but with VFX. That's at least one way you can think about it. So I would encourage women to start, especially creative women, to start thinking of interesting episodic short content that they could be writing for some of these emerging studios. And then also, Freedom 360 is a really great entry level if you're interested in actually getting into production. They have a easy rig and also a lot of, easy, I'll put that in quotes, but like they have a pretty user-friendly rig, and they have a lot of resources on their website as well.
Right.
Yeah, I would definitely echo some of what Christina was just saying about, right now it's very much people taking what we know about film and TV and putting it into VR, and I think where VR is really going to take off is when people figure out what the medium of VR is beyond what we're already doing. Instead of just translating things over, realizing that it's an entirely new storytelling medium. As far as business models go, it's a challenge. I've been on the ground for 18 months trying to talk about Jaunt and explain what our business model is. And first people thought we were a camera company and then a production studio, and then I still get 30 emails a week asking if you can rent our camera. I think the biggest challenge for everybody is going to be making sure that we're getting really good quality content out there first, which is part of why we focused on building the tools, and now we're focusing on finding those creatives, doing things like our partnership with Sundance, so that the first VR experiences that people have are positive, and they want to buy a headset, and they want to go watch stuff over and over, and it's not a shaky video of someone's kid's soccer game, and why would you pay money to see that, So, I think with the business model, part of it is thinking about, like, how do you figure out how to put together compelling, interesting experiences in an entirely new medium that nobody knows how to use yet. I think the next year is going to be very telling as far as that goes.
Yeah. Michelle, how about you as a YouTube content creator? What business models are you finding that are working or aren't working?
It's still so new, it's hard to say. I'd say my most profitable content is still the framed content, but I think it's just a matter of time for me to find the right formula to get there with the 360 content. But I do think for me a business model has been just getting myself out there, just exposing people to the technology and how exciting it is, and then usually something just comes my way is how it's ended up. Just somebody ends up becoming a client because they're really interested in 360 video and they want to know more. And also, at least for smaller creators, I would suggest going to meetups, meeting people in the industry, not just film industry, the VR industry, because you're going to meet a lot of people who might end up wanting to work with you. For instance, there's a company that I'm talking to that wants me to help them storyboard something to they're trying to figure out how they can kind of pitch this project that they're working on, and it's not a film in any sense, but because I've told stories in 360, they're asking for help to kind of figure out how to tell that story when they're pitching an idea.
Gotcha. Well, we are wrapping up our conversation, but I have one last question, and then I want to go round robin and for you guys to give quickly some projects that you want to promote of your own. So Warren Spector, you may have seen this earlier this year, was talking about how VR is a fad. He says VR will go the way of 3D TVs. I think it'll generate some interest among the hardcore gamers, and I see amazing possibilities in VR for social media and virtual meetings and training and crazy stuff like dealing with phobias. But for entertainment, he says, I'm not just seeing it. What do you guys say to that? Maria, go ahead.
This is where I want to give the surveys. 66% of respondents to recent virtual reality surveys said they're interested in consuming media in virtual reality compared to 60% who are interested in gaming. So the interest is definitely there. Not only is the interest there, there's a ton of content out there, and it requires much lower-end headsets. Google Cardboard or Gear VR headset, they cost between $5 and $100. Anybody can get this. You can hand them out to people. The New York Times just distributed 1 million of them. They're very easy to get into people's hands, and it's fun. The experiences are still enjoyable. They may not be Star Trek holodeck level experiences, but they're still a lot of fun. And so I'm seeing a lot of predictions that mobile-based virtual reality, the kind that's great for watching movies on a giant personal screen and watching 3D movies and 360 experiences and the GoPros and all that stuff, is going to be accounting for 70% of the user base next year. The Oculus Rift is getting all the media attention because it's got the cool story with Palmer Luckey and the basement and the barefoot inventor. But the Google Cardboards, those virtual reality headsets, they are the ones that are actually making an impact on the ground. Those are the ones that people want. I take them with me to conferences, to shows, to events of various kinds in this region, and everybody who tries it on goes, oh my God, this is so much fun. I want to get this for my kids. I want to get this for my brother. I want to get this for my uncle. Where do I get it? And it's just enjoyable. It's just enjoyable, and especially because a lot of the experiences have you standing in one place or sitting in one place, or they're short, fun marketing experiences. They don't make you sick, which is always a great advantage for new technology, that it doesn't make you throw up.
Anybody else? VR is a fad. Go for it, Dan, quickly.
I think this is the key. We all have one of these, and this is the portal to open the VR content. It is really easy to now view or create, so it will be like a toy. Everyone can play with it, and everyone can create. Obviously, there are like giants like Felix and Paul, immersive media, that have been creating these things, especially immersive media since 1996. So they have more professional content, but I think everyone can play with it, and it will be really cool because everyone can see it. That's the most important.
And to make a distinction between, I think, games and entertainment is a little bit short-sighted. I mean, I think we're going to be starting to see a blending of games and entertainment, and like in the end, it's just going to become content. And will people want to view content in this way? absolutely, and I think, like I said, we're going to see a blend of like movies and video games kind of coming together in VR.
In these last few minutes, I just want you to quickly go through some of the projects that you're working on that you want to promote, and I'm going to go from left to right on my screen. So, Christina, let's start with you. Quickly, a couple projects that you're working on.
Well, right now we're heading down to Cabo this week to do a virtual tour of a new Four Seasons resort that they're building there, and it's going to be in a showroom here in LA. So we're pretty excited about it because it's a blend of CGI, 360 video, and it'll be interactive, and it'll be a kind of showcase for the kinds of stuff we can do, and I think it's a really obvious use case for VR.
Great. Dan, how about you? Quickly, what couple projects you're working on?
Yeah, well, last year I created a VR experience on a boat. It was really impossible, but impossible things happen. So I achieved this great project, and I want to share it with you. I just copied into the chat. If you can access it, it would be really cool.
Awesome. I'll tweet that out after we're done here, Dan. So appreciate you joining us and supporting women in VR. That's phenomenal. So Melissa and Lackey, you guys are in Germany shooting a project right now, correct?
Yes, we are. We're working on our thesis project for UC Berkeley graduate.
Yeah, so we're looking at refugees all over Germany and the many different, and depending on the way that they're distributed around the country, and we're hoping to create something that can really give insight into what the experience is like for these. So.
Great. Your microphone was cutting out, but they're working.
There'll be a lot of post-production, but that should be out in spring.
Great. Your microphone cut out, but you were working with refugees in Germany if you weren't able to understand what they said. So Marcel, how about you? You've got some fascinating projects in the pipeline as well.
Sure. I'm working on an immersive documentary about South Sudan. It's about famine in South Sudan and how famine happens, and that's going to, that's for PBS's Frontline documentary program, and that's going to be coming out in February with 2 sections as teasers, and then the full film. All 3 of those pieces are coming out in February. It's going to be available in the Gear VR through the Oculus Video app. And as well as on Facebook 360.
Excellent. At Story Up, we have an experience that's coming out in February with IM360, and it allows people to step inside the shoes of someone who doesn't have mobility in Zambia. And we also finished a great project with Jaunt, and it allows terminally ill and aging veterans to see their World War II memorial. So if you go to honoreverywhere.org, tell a veteran you can see the video on the Jaunt player, and you can actually share it with a veteran who isn't able to physically travel. So people with disabilities and veterans are our beat, and we're excited to be creating some more content for people with autism, and also illustrate what it's like for an individual. Just shot an interview not too long ago who had a stroke, and what it feels like if you are having a stroke. Mariah? Maria. Mariah. How about you? What you working on?
Well, I was trying to unmute my.
Yep, you're muted.
There goes.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Well, my other than writing reviews of all these headsets that I'm trying out, which is a lot of fun, and waiting for the Rift to actually start shipping. I am really interested in an open source peer-to-peer virtual reality metaverse. And this is what I've been writing about heavily for the last 6 years at Hypergood Business. And it's an open source platform, kind of like Second Life, but open source. So if Second Life is AOL, OpenSim would be kind of like the World Wide Web. And I have a directory of the hundreds or so different virtual worlds that can be accessed via headsets, via the Oculus Rift, via these headsets. You can build the world from inside. You can be standing in this world and use the in-world tools to build it, like you can in Second Life. And this, for me, is really, really exciting because I love the idea of an open source, peer-to-peer, hyper-connected metaverse that we can travel between different destinations, build our own destinations, and visit other people's destinations, and I think that is really exciting. Whatever it actually winds up evolving into, I'm hoping that it will be in that general direction.
Great. Michelle, how about you?
Okay. Am I unmuted? Yes. All right. So, all right. So on my channel, Kill9 TV on YouTube, I'll be premiering Boomer's Day Off Zero very soon. It's a 360 prequel to a viral hit web series that shows the softer side of zombies, and it features the voiceover of Earl Alexander, who's best known for voicing Lewis in the game Left 4 Dead. I also shot a proof of concept called Ion Agent at YouTube Space LA, which is a sci-fi mystery shot in 360, but I hope to combine it with CG and 3D elements. So I'm working on putting together a pitch for that as well. But it's a mystery that takes place in the future about a girl who is interacting in VR and runs into what appear to be memories of people who've been long dead. And other than that, I'm going to be upping the video count on my channel, doing actually more demos of VR experiences and gaming.
You go, girl. Softer side of zombies. I love that. Nicole, how about you?
So I wish I could tell you guys about all the cool stuff that we've got coming up. Of course, there's
Or
certain
for Jaunt,
NDAs. Yeah, I wish I had my own projects. My life is jaunt right now. I will say that we recently released a new version of our app. So if you've downloaded it in the past, go back to the App Store, go back to Google Play Store, get the new one. It's the one with the square logo instead of the round logo. This one actually features interactive worlds, so as you navigate through, it's got our entire library of content, and you can go into the adventure world or the film world or the music world. We'd love to get some feedback, especially from some women. We haven't had a huge test group for that. And, you know, go play with it, go break it, go tell us what we can do better. It's sort of a soft launch of our app, but it's really cool. And as we release new content, every new piece will come out in that program, so you'll be able to see things as they come. We've got new stuff coming this week, next week, and a bunch of things in February as well.
Excellent. And Angela, you have some neat stuff that's going on with the fashion industry. You want to talk about that?
So I just published a live illustration 360 video, and right now I'm experimenting with doing a stop motion 360 video, again with fashion illustrations, and hopefully I can get that done before New York Fashion Week next month, but we'll see how that goes.
Excellent. Last thing before we go through all of you and say where you can find your content. You can find StoryUp's content at story-up.com. Christina? You're muted.
I just recommend follow VR Playhouse on Twitter for updates as our work is released in 2016.
Dan?
Follow us at 3govideo.com.
Melissa and Lackey?
It's in the works, but you can follow us on Twitter, I guess. I'm at Laki Taki, LAKITALKI.
Bosworth, BOSWORTH.
Marcel?
My Twitter handle is at Marcel Hopkins, and that's at Marcel, MARCELLE Hopkins. And then the South Sudan immersive documentary is going to be released by Frontline. It's pbs.org/frontline.
Maria?
You can find me at hypergoodbusiness.com. I just texted the link in there if you want to post it. And I'm on Twitter at Maria Korolov as well.
Ciao. Kill9 TV.
Okay, I'm Kill9 TV on YouTube, or michelleosorio.com, or Michelle Kenobi pretty much everywhere else on the internet.
Nicole, where can we find your stuff?
Of course, we are at Jaunt VR, website jauntvr.com/content. In both of the app stores, look for Jaunt VR, not just Jaunt. You'll get other stuff. Or if you want to hit me up personally, my Twitter handle is Nicole in the Bay.
Angela.
And my video link is video.com/Angela, and I also sent a direct link to my latest video. So I'm going to be uploading stuff mostly on there.
All right, sounds good. I so appreciate all of you all sharing your time. I recognize that this was way longer than the 30 minutes that I promised you, but you are fascinating people and really doing some fascinating stuff. So collectively, it's been wonderful to get together, share about technology, share about some of those solutions, and we'll be doing more of these broadcasts, not just with women in VR, but with other VR content creators, talking about challenges, solutions, cameras, headsets. Maybe there's an idea that you have for a future broadcast. So for now, I'm Sarah Hill from Story Up Studios. We'll see you later. Have a great day, and high five to all of you in the Hangout.